Alright, should we maybe get some kind of show on the road? There we go, look at that added face cam. Hi everyone. You can see me now, and you can also see the mess of cameras and mics and stuff that invade my painting space on the daily. This is the reality that you don't see in videos, but here this is a light. There's also a light just here off camera. This is not to light things well enough to see. This is to light things well enough to shoot. This is also a light which, when I'm painting, needs to be on. But as you'll see, if I put it on here, it's not a good time. This is the actual one that lights my painting, which I don't need on for stuff like this. But this is a diffused panel, so it's the perfect kind of light for painting. The rest of the lights literally just light my desk area a little bit more, so that I don't have to have the exposure right down. Sorry, so I don't have to have the exposure right up to get my painting area looking right. And then obviously the mic, which would sit here if I was doing voiceover, but for a live stream where I'm actually working at the same time, it can't do that. So it needs to sit sort of somewhere around here, and fortunately it can still pick up. Hey Phrase, how you doing, buddy? So yeah, it's going to be a pretty laid back stream, as they all are these days. Just resizing my face cam. We're just going to build this box of Custodes basically, and probably spray them black. Friday's kind of it's a bit of a, not a moot day for me, but it's a day where I don't expect myself to be quite as productive. Just how it falls in my week, the kind of shit that I'm usually doing by this point, and so I've been instructed by my customer to make as many sword and board out of these as possible, and I believe we do not need a shield captain. I'm pretty sure we can get 5 sword and board out of this box. I believe you can get 5 sword and board out of this box, so with any luck, that is precisely what we're going to do. There's certainly 5 shield bosses and 5 shields, so we will find out. We will find out. So, those few of you that are watching at the moment, how are you today? How's your Friday looking? Are you hobbying later when you're finished working from home? Is that the plan? I hope for most people it is. My YouTube username is shit, that makes chatting on YouTube awkward, but hi. Morgan Muffle Shenline. Hey Maria. I was not ready for this music. Cheers, Dave. Yeah, I love the chiptune playlist on Pretzel. I've always been a big fan of Pretzel's chiptune playlist. When I used to be a full-time streamer, it was my go-to for royalty-free music. And Pretzel has a little YouTube safe button, because not everything that's royalty-free is actually YouTube safe. Some stuff can still get you struck on YouTube. But the great advantage of Pretzel is that it actually has a little YouTube safe button. So that's why I use it, and this is my favourite playlist on Pretzel. Also, my microphone cable is trying to come detached from my desk, and that is not ideal because I do not know where my gaffer tape is. Oh yeah, it is behind me. Okay, so I can retape it. It's all good. So yeah, if you want to see frantic and fast hot building action, this is not the place to be. What we basically do here is just relax, build miniatures, and talk. So if you're new to one of my streams, I don't do many. It's pretty seldom that I do them. But when I do, the basic premise is more about the chat than it is about the miniatures. So something to perhaps bear in mind, depending on the types of streams that you enjoy. Considering getting some Golden Boys, currently reading the Watch of the Throne series and loving the Custodes focus. Watch of the Throne is something I've considered having a go of, actually. I'm glad to hear that you're finding it good. I'm very glad to hear that you finding it good. I like the Custodes. I do like them. They're one of those armies that I think I would collect. Maybe if I didn't collect Space Marines. I don't know that... Because I have a Chaos Space Marine army and 2 Space Marine armies, I don't know that I want more power armor in my life. But that's not to say that I don't think they're an excellent army. Found a good lo-fi playlist called Stream Beats, which is safe for YouTube. Oh, nice. Nice. I do like some of that, you know, the sort of lo-fi hip-hop style stuff. I do find that quite enjoyable. Right, what am I doing here? 25, 26, 27. I'm just, what's the word? Is it called kerning, where you take your kits off and put them all in some sort of order? Is that what it's called? 27. $28. Thinking of putting a squad into my SM army to match up with the lore I'm writing, just to look good on the... See, that sounds cool. That sounds cool. If it's just a sort of for fun project to add to your display. Yeah, I mean, army organisation doesn't really match up super well to like, what's the phrase I'm looking for? To how things structure out in lore. Like, you know, for example, at the fall of Monarchia, a small contingent of Custodes get assigned to watch over Lorgar. And so the word bearers end up with a small fighting force of Custodes attached to them for quite a while. And I think it's only like, I think it's just like a captain, a shield captain and his honor guard. So effectively like a squad, you know. And that's not really something you could do in game. That's not, you know, you can't really make that work in game, which is a shame. You're saying it's not hot when you get the plastic crack out. Morning, Mugs. It's good to see you. How you doing? Yeah, I think I just fancied a little R&R with the Custard Boys today. Where's the 5th breastplate? Ah, there's the breast. There's the back and there's the breast. Okay, cool. So these are quite conveniently universal, the breast and back plates. The breastplates do have different numbers on the kit, but that's just because they have different designs, not because they actually fit together differently. This is fortunately not my first rodeo. Custodes is one of the cheapest kill teams to put together, so when I was on my big kill team kick and I was assembling lots and lots of kill teams, I built Custodes fairly early on. So fortunately this is not my first rodeo with this kit. Right, so that's those chappos. Now let's go for 34. Bases out of the way. 34's got a leg, I assume. 33, that'll be his leg. I need a new set of snips, quite badly. Game rules are weird now with Primaris. Yeah, it's just a bit odd. 100 Marines in a company, except some squads are in units of 3, like the new snipers. Yeah, it's a bit strange, isn't it? Chris Gill says, "Hey Stu, do you offer lessons not via Patreon?" Yes, I absolutely do. Yeah, private tuition is something that is available not just through Patreon. You can contact me. It's probably easiest to just contact me on social media, purely because my social media links are all in the description of like every single video on my YouTube. So it's just probably easier for you to find my contact details that way. But you can contact me through social media, and I can make arrangements with you to do it privately. The pricing structure is a little bit weird, or people find it a little bit weird, because basically the setup time for giving tuition is pretty much the same regardless of the length of lesson. So it's it gets a lot cheaper to book bigger blocks, if that makes sense. So like for a single hour you'll pay 40 quid. For 2 hours you'll pay £35 an hour, because the setup time isn't as like the pre-setup stuff that I have to do before the lesson is the same. And then for 3 hours plus you'll pay £30 an hour. So it's, in terms of the actual pricing, it's in the same sort of price region as getting, like, say, private guitar lessons. I know this because I've had a few private guitar lessons, so I know roughly what they cost, and it is usually in that sort of £30 to £50 an hour region. They don't tend to go cheaper than £30 an hour as a rule. I mean, you know, like if somebody was booking, I don't know, 10 hours of extended lessons with me, then yeah, maybe I'd do like, you know, a lower rate for that. Because I think it maybe makes sense. It's maybe only fair. But yeah, it's sort of, in terms of price efficiency to the customer, it's in your best interest to be booking 2 or 3 hours, not a single hour. Which is why the single hours are what are given away on Patreon. Because I don't really like people wasting their money on single hours. It makes me feel bad. But obviously, you know, you have to charge for your time. As a business, you have to charge for your time. So it's not something I can really do anything about other than work for free. And obviously working for free isn't a solution to a problem. So what I do instead is I give the single hours as a patron perk, as a sort of gift when people sign up at certain higher tiers. And then the more sort of cost efficient way to buy lessons is the thing that you would book privately. Sound. How'd you manage to wangle your work to pay for you to learn to paint minis? That's fucking brilliant. I bought everyone in the office McDonald's because I'm in a good mood. Mugs. Friend Mugs. Where are my McDonald's? I could do a McMuffaloff. I don't know if I could, actually. I woke up a bit, you know, sometimes when you just wake up a bit sort of, oh, I don't really think I can face food. Like, yeah, I woke up a bit like that today. Not ideal. Right, this is the... Oh, he's 17, that's why. This is 18. Yeah. New leg, who dis? So we've got 17, 18, 19 will be one of his hands. Hey, Fran. It's a scheme we have called a wellness account. You can use it to pay for gym memberships, fitness classes, hobby equipment, and that's super cool. That's fucking super cool. But yes, I mean, you know, to answer how it would relate. Yeah, I mean, I'm a registered business. I'm registered in the UK, and I pay taxes, and I invoice all of my work through PayPal invoicing. So there's accountability for the company on what they've spent the money on. Because that tends to be where the difficulty is if it's a company buying it, they need to be able to show accountability for what they've spent the money on for their tax purposes. Because they'll get tax relief for doing that for you, which is probably one of the reasons they do it. The government will give them an amount of tax relief for being such kind and benevolent employers. And they'll need an invoice to show accountability for that, which is absolutely a thing that I can do. In fact, it is absolutely the thing that I do every time, so yeah. Right. Who's the next badger? We've got Mr. 14 here. What is it that you're interested in learning, Chris? It's always a good question, a good follow-up question. Nice. Cheers, man. Mr. 14 is probably going to go with this number 13 arm, I would hazard. And I bet we've got another arm that goes with him as well. 11 maybe? Kit, why are you being confusing? There's a 10 and 11 here. This is like a raised arm. Ah, I see. He's got a couple of arm options. I guess you don't use the raised arm if you're giving him a spear, but if he's having sword and board, then it probably doesn't matter. And has he got a leg as well? He should have a leg. Yeah, 8. There we go. Skin tones is something I always struggle in generally, just tips on improving from where I am right now. Okay, that's something we could work on. It's probably something we'll have to consult on a little so that I can come up with some specific plans for what to run through with you. Hey David, how you doing? Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. It's a commission. It's part of an army commission. So I did oh, it's on the shelf, isn't it? Do you remember there was a video that went up a few weeks ago for a white Dawn Eagle jet bike? And I said that I had some infantry to do as well, so I was gonna do a separate video for the infantry because that's the same colour scheme as the rider. Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? It's not something you typically find, but I mean, having stuff like this cape in your bits box can be really handy. I'm absolutely sure you could persuade this cape to fit more than just this Custodes captain. The only problem is obviously it's got this relief on the back of it, this bit here. No, it's not the huge one. This is for Joe, Maria. It's not a huge one. It's like 3 jet bikes, 6 Terminators, and 5 normal Custodians. So it's not huge, but it's, you know, it's adequate that it won't take 2 seconds. And I want to make a start on it. Like Joe's really patient as a customer. He's brilliant insofar as like he's more than happy to just wait for things and, you know, let me kind of get on with what I'm doing. Because I've also got a pile of magic cards for him here. Got a bunch of magic cards that I owe him as well. And he's just really good at, like, because he sort of he understands that, you know, if he wants to keep piling more commissions on, it doesn't make sense to then start mailing them out individually. It makes more sense to mail them out all together. And he's great like that, so he's kind of letting me just keep plugging away at these and getting them to him when they're all done. To be fair, the troops won't actually take that long to do anyway. The colour scheme's really simple. The longest thing, the most involved part is actually the jet bikes, which is why I did one first, so that I had the test scheme all worked out. I've seen the video and it's very impressive how it looks. Thank you. Solar Watch Army. Yeah, it's the black and gold colour scheme. It's actually a custom colour scheme, I think. I think he came up with it himself, so it's not exactly correct to any of the existing ones. But it's also very close to one of the existing ones. Hey Felix, how you doing, mate? So they're predominantly black armour, and then they have accents of red and gold. But anywhere that there's like a wing motif, the red accents are worked up to like a white. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And when it all comes together, the idea is that it's black, white, and red. which is, you know, very classic. It's very easy to make most armies look pretty fucking good like that without any real effort. So, you know, it's a good call. Especially as it was, like, he's painting some of this as well. He's got the rest of the army with him in the US. And he's working on bits of it as well. And, you know, it needs to be a colour scheme that's sort of friendly to his kind of beginner level more than anything. We kind of batted ideas back and forth on the colour scheme when he first was getting into Warhammer. Do I look like I know the common colour schemes? Well, yeah, there is that. There is that. I mean, to be fair, I think it's pretty impressive that you put up with the amount of Warhammer chat in the Discord, considering that it's not really something that interests you so much. I find your patience very impressive. So we've got like just 2 arm options basically on this guy. So what I'm going to do is kind of build the shell of each one first, and then start adding all of the accessories and stuff. I tend to not put the little knives on them. I don't even know what they're called. I tend to not put them on. I just think they make the minis look cluttered, and I don't think that really adds anything to the aesthetic, so I left them off of mine. I'll probably leave them off of these. But I think that's everything I need just to do the basic build, and then we'll start getting swords and shields and shoulder pads and leg pads on. Hey Heather, how you doing? Out of curiosity, why do you have masking tape around your desk? So, this is actually just a sheet of black 300 GSM craft paper, or craft card. And this gives me a peel away background. So when you see painting videos, you're zoomed all the way in like this, and you just get this neat black background, which obviously is much better for camera consistency. It makes it a lot easier for me to get a good shot. It also makes the focus on my camera a bit more accurate, because I use a sort of auto manual focus system on my camera. It's really weird. I have this little sort of focus reticule, and I can kind of move it to where I want it and tell it what to focus on, and then it does that and refocuses. So it's like an autofocus, but like a controlled autofocus. It's not a live autofocus. So having this nice solid background helps that and just makes a cleaner looking shot. It also means that every time this gets dirty, I can just peel it off, and I've got a fresh clean desk to work with again. So you often see it never really gets zoomed out to this point in most videos. It's very rare that you see this in most videos, but what I tend to do is use this to curl my brush on quite often. And yeah, it just makes things look neater, and it's something that's disposable that I can just pick up and put in the bin. Weirdly, because of that, actually, that's actually the cleanest part of my desk. When I peel this off, this part of my desk is still brand new, and the rest of my desk has got like overspray on it and shit like that, which is kind of funny. Yeah, Custodes are great like that. You can actually get through a whole army pretty easily. I'm a little less active lately. I just got distracted by cat series. I don't think you need to worry about your activity levels. I don't think, like, the only time I ever worry about someone's activity levels in the Discord is if they suddenly go quiet, because I always go, shit, I hope I hope they're not having some kind of personal problem that they need to talk about or whatever. And it doesn't come from a place of like detecting absenteeism. It comes from a place of, you know, wanting to make sure people are okay. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. It saves having to constantly scrub the desk every few months, you know, in the area where I'm shooting. It means I've at least got one area that I can always keep clean. Yeah, I agree with that as well, Chris. It kind of, you don't feel bad if you want to spend longer on them. Like, you can do nice, quick, effective jobs on them, but you also don't feel like you've done something wrong if that's not what you want to do. I'll be right back. I forgot to replace my battery this morning before I started stream. Okay, I'm back. I'm like, oh, I'll stop and talk to the chat for a second so I can take on some nicotine, because it's still kind of early in the morning. Well, not really, but, you know, it's early enough since I got up that I'm like, still needing to get my blood nicotine levels up before I can concentrate. And the first thing I do is go to take a drag on my e-cigarette, and my battery's run out. So it's like, oh, this is good. I'll just BRB the stream and go and get a battery then. If you're trying to post a link, mate, it won't let you. And I actually, because I don't stream very often on YouTube, I don't actually know how to turn that off at the moment. So for the time being, links are not a thing you can do in my stream chat. I will at some point figure out how to sort that out. But yeah, for the time being, there's not a lot I can do, I'm afraid, mate. Okay. So I'm just gonna get, as I said, the basic shell of these guys together. So just, you know, legs, arms and torsos, essentially, for a start. And the reason I do that first is because it's kind of easier to tweak the pose before you start sticking on like shoulder pads and leg plates and stuff like that. Or at least I think it is. I think it's easier to tweak the pose at that stage. So I do this sort of basic bit of building first. And then add the layers on top, the layers of armor on top. Always kind of works out. One of the really nice things about the Black Custodes color scheme, one thing I really appreciate about it, is that you don't have to go back in afterwards and you don't have to go back in afterwards and paint all of the soft joints of the armor because they're already black. You just have to not mess them up in the first place. Which army needs the least edge highlighting? Drowning in Space Marines this morning and batch painting 10 Assault Intercessors. I mean, like, so here's a thing. No army needs any edge highlighting. Which, for some people, is like a really bizarre notion. But the important thing to remember, I think this is kind of, it should be somewhat of a mental priority for miniature painters, and especially newer miniature painters, because newer miniature painters really get sort of led by the hand, unfortunately. They don't really get to kind of explore and find their own way very easily these days, because of GW's internet presence mostly. But edge highlighting is a stylistic choice. It's not an essential part of the process, right? There are many ways to skin a cat, and you don't have to edge highlight when you're painting a miniature. So to give you an example, let's take a look at this guy, because he's on hand. Let's give him a zoom a minute. There you go. So the only edge highlighting on this entire miniature, the only deliberate edge highlighting on this entire miniature is here. And that didn't need to be edge highlighted. I could have just done like a volume down the middle here on the sort of apex of this curve. But basically like down here, front of the foot, that kind of thing. And other than that, I mean, like, there's a few edge highlights that I've just sort of placed to accent volumes here and there. You know, like this little highlight in here is kind of just to accent this little sort of Y-shaped highlight. But for the most part, there's not really any edge highlighting on this at all. And yet everything is lit, right? There's highlights everywhere. One of the ones that really bugs me is, like, in every GW tutorial where there's a cape, they trace this line at the bottom here. Like, why would there be a highlight there? In what way of light hitting that object would it cause the lower edge to fucking glow? you know? Malleus, thank you very much. This is actually for a giveaway at the moment. There is a video currently live on the channel with this guy in the thumbnail, and that has a link in it to a giveaway that's running for all of February. So if you like him, you could actually own him. And there's also an alternative prize of an unpainted version. So if you want to paint him yourself, you can just have an unpainted version instead. But yeah, this is quite an important thing to learn, is that edge highlighting is absolutely a choice. Now with black in particular, which is why this is a bit of an odd one to choose to illustrate the point, I like to edge highlight black because it's easier to make black read as black with edge highlights, because you're not infringing on the body color as much. But with like anything except black, I tend to do really minimal edge highlighting. Like, I only really put it on places where I actually want it. We'll have another look at something. This is my most recent miniature. So this is the miniature that I finished yesterday. And again, there is very, very minimal edge highlight in here. Very, very minimal. You know, I've put a bit in here because I wanted some, and a bit in here because I wanted some. The tips of this are not actually edge highlighted. This is just the way the blend looks. It's not actually an edge highlight. It's you know, same as here. Like, it's just, you know, following the shape of the sculpt. But again, it's, you know, it's pretty minimal, and it's a tough thing to learn. And Heather, like, I totally get where you're coming from, because this is the point, is, you know, when you are a relatively new painter, especially if you're into Games Workshop stuff, you're gonna land initially at their web presence, and your only sort of impressions of painting initially are gonna be the stuff that they teach. I think an important thing to realise is that whilst they never say it, I think GW themselves do acknowledge that there's a much wider world to how to finish miniatures. Look at the Forge World style and look at the Blood Bowl style. If you look at the box arts for those model ranges, they're not painted in the same style as the mainline 40k stuff. Even Age of Sigmar is only sometimes painted that way. Age of Sigmar isn't always painted that way either. It's very much a 40k thing at its core these days. But GW do not really openly give you much information on how to not paint that way. And I think the main reason for that is because that style of painting leads very well into using lots of colours. That's one of the main things, which, you know, means that they can sell you lots of paint. And, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not slagging them off for that. That's smart business sense. You know, if you promote a style of painting that encourages customers to buy a lot of paints, and you happen to sell the paints as well as the miniatures, that's good business. You know, that's being a smart business, or having a smart business model. So it's not, you know, I don't hold it against them for doing that. But on the other side of it, edge highlighting is hard fucking work. And like, I say this as someone who, my current commission that I'm just finishing up is, and again, these have been all over the channel, is this Necromantic Horror Blood Bowl team. And there's fucking loads of edge highlighting on them. You know, like all that green piping is essentially a 2-stage edge highlight. All those orange lines are highlighted. You can kind of, you see there's edge highlights within the orange stripes. Those are like really fine. It's hard work doing that much edge highlighting. And like, whilst it might be smart for their business to encourage you to buy lots of paint, it's not very good for hobby fatigue. It's very, very easy to burn out when you only really know that style of painting. So like, I really sympathize with where you're at. If that's kind of the main style of painting you've been exposed to, and you've got very minimal exposure to other styles, and you know, you've already started like most of your army in that style, like that's a tough corner to find yourself in. There is way more glazing than they show, yeah. John Nunez recently did a video where he tried to copy some Plague Marine box art, and like, he really noticed how much what they say they're doing is not what they're actually doing. That was kind of the big underlying thing of his video. Yeah, Dave, I could agree with that. I could agree with that. The style is, it's not really based on realism. It's very expressive. The problem is the whole point of something being expressive is that it is, at least to a degree, individual. And so when everybody's doing it, it loses the value of being an expressive style, which is to highlight the individuality of the painter. Like, painting in that style the first time somebody did it was probably mind-blowing, and that's probably why it's become a standard, you know. Oh, John Nunez is brilliant. If you don't sub Ninjon on YouTube, you really should. He is a fantastic painter and teacher. He's really good. There's been rumours of Darren Latham making painting videos for them, which would be amazing. Yeah, I'm still a bit puzzled by all of that. He was told to shut his YouTube channel down, and I can't help but think that's because he wasn't teaching GW style. I can't see any other reason why they would have a problem with it, because it's just more people looking at their product. So I don't know if him officially making mini painting content would be a good thing, because I don't know if they'd actually let him do his own thing, or whether they'd encourage him to do their thing. I mean, obviously he works for them anyway as a sculptor, so, you know. But Darren Latham's main thing, honestly, like, the technique that Darren uses is actually really quite simple, and I think he would probably say that if he was asked. Darren's main thing is that he's an incredibly precise painter, and that's what makes his work so standout, because he is so unbelievably precise compared to most of us. He is way above and beyond my level of precision. in terms of like technical understanding and like repertoire, there's a lot of painters that are on par with Darren, but where he just blazes ahead of most people is just the fact that he is so fucking precise, like supernatural levels of precision, and I love it. I think it's incredible. And it's interesting because like I don't particularly care for a lot of the style of painting that he does. He does do some stuff that I really, really like stylistically. That's not me saying I don't like his style, but by and large, a lot of the stuff he does, it's a bit sort of, it feels a little bit generic to me in its stylistic approach, but I still love to see it and love looking at it because I love just admiring how precise he is, and that's like a really beautiful thing to me because it's a skill that I just do not have, despite the fact that I've spent years trying to develop it. I think it's because he was competing with the Warcom channel. Yeah, but like, how is he ever going to even get close to the number of subs and views that the Warcom channel gets? Imagine it was him using old paint and saying use Winsor & Newton brushes didn't help it. Yeah, that probably didn't help. That probably didn't help. Yeah, Darren kind of teaches the heavy metal style, as in he teaches the actual heavy metal style, not what heavy metal tells you they're doing. He teaches you like what heavy metal are actually doing, as opposed to what heavy metal say they're doing, which are definitely different things. Yeah, it's certainly questionable. I don't really understand why they didn't let him carry on. The only thing I can think of is like I get this feeling that they want heavy metal secrets protected still, like they were in the 90s. Like they don't quite understand how the internet works. Like GW have proven time and again that they're not the most internet savvy company. They don't really use the internet in the best way. And part of me just wonders if perhaps what it is just that they still want the heavy metal style protected like it used to be in the 90s. Like no one knew how to paint heavy metal in the 90s because everyone figured everything out for themselves, and the only people who those techniques were passed to were people that worked for them. You know, they were taught how to do the style. So like I have to wonder if maybe that's all it is that they still want the style protected. I did know with his YouTube he would go to heavy metal, get their recipes and show them. He'd advocate non-GW paintbrushes and transfer. Yeah, that definitely doesn't help, especially when he's working for them. But this is also why I don't think him making official content would be good. Because if he's making official content, it would be a watered down version of his content where he's forced to do everything the way they say that he has to do it. And I actually hope he doesn't do that. I would rather have the memory of his content, which, you know, he built a fairly big library in a fairly short time. Like, he was a fucking busy guy. I put out 2 videos a week, and that takes my job from being a full-time job to like a full-time job plus a part-time job on top. Putting out two videos a week, and that's with those videos generally coming from my commission work as well. It's so weird comparing his situation to the original Forge World Masterclass book where they told you to use Tamiya paints, etc. Yeah, the thing is that, like, how to put this without going on too much of a lengthy rant. Apple in the early 2000s kind of demonstrated how powerful ecosystemic marketing can be. The idea behind ecosystemic marketing is that you give your customer nowhere else to shop. You put your customer in a position where they don't want or need to go to anyone else for anything else. And you do this by essentially offering everything they could possibly need, regardless of whether it's better or worse, and their brand loyalty to you makes them use your products. It's exactly what Apple does. You know, people who are iPhone stalwarts tend to also favour Mac laptops, for example. Back in the earlier days when, you know, MP3 players were still a thing, they would favour iPods over non-Apple branded MP3 players, that kind of stuff. So Apple kind of pioneered this idea of ecosystemic marketing and how powerful it is. And what can be achieved through it, and Games Workshop have adopted that in more recent years, probably from about sort of 2005 to 2010, somewhere around there is where they really started to lean into it. It's true, it's true. Sorry, let me just catch up with chat a second. I mean, Wes, they might be. That might be why, but I probably don't think that is why. I probably think that that's the level of painter they want, even though most of the painting you do won't be at that level. Like, if you look at the current Warhammer TV team, if you look at the current Warcom team, Nick's is a solid, high tabletop painter, and I think that's fair. I don't think that's being overly critical. Peachy's certainly a display level or competition level painter. Peachy can paint at that level, but very rarely does on any of the content. The other two guys, Wade and I always struggle to remember the other guy's name, but they very rarely even make content. They tend to do all the live stream stuff. They don't really make any of the painting content. And then, look back in history, Duncan is, a high tabletop painter. Duncan is by no means a competition level painter. Then you had, Emma, who absolutely is a competition level painter. She's a fucking brilliant painter. But, she didn't really do a ton of stuff for Warhammer TV, but what she did do for Warhammer TV was mostly Warhammer TV level. So, I don't know. I don't know if them advertising for a competition level painter is indicative that they're going to produce higher level content. I think they know exactly. Yeah, Muggs has just hit the nail on the head. I think they know that their strength is in appealing to beginners, because that's the easiest way to grow their ecosystem, right? It goes back to my original point. You lock people into the ecosystem by hooking them when they're at the start of their journey. This also links into exactly what Heather was saying about how, she only really knows the GW style, and because she's relatively new to the hobby. Yeah, absolutely. Emma streams on Twitch. She's not on YouTube, but absolutely, if you enjoy painting streams, you should totally head over there and check her out. She streams weekday evenings, as I recall. I used to watch her streams all the time, but these days I make sure I'm not in the office on weekday evenings, and if I'm not in the office, I don't really have a convenient platform from which to watch streams. So, even the last time I spoke to her, I said, I'd really like to pop into a stream again sometime soon. I've still not managed to do so because I'm just not at a computer that I can sit and watch a painting stream on during her stream times anymore. I used to be all the time. And part of that is just because I used to live on my own. When I used to watch her streams most regularly, I used to live on my own. Whereas, now, I have to... not have to, that's the wrong word to use. I want to be considerate of the fact that I live with someone else who, might not necessarily want to watch a miniature painting stream on the TV, for example. Our TV is hooked up to a computer, but I'm not necessarily gonna put a painting stream on the lounge TV, Sometimes they overdo their highlighting to a point where it looks more comical than realistic. I think often, to be honest, Wolfgang, that's kind of quite indicative of the sort of Warhammer TV style, is the sort of over-exaggeration on highlighting. And that's not to necessarily say that that's by any means a bad thing. Oh, Mugs. It's really nice. Yeah, I think that's where we actually met each other, Mugs. I think that's where we first started talking. That ain't the cloaked and masked baddies from the Mario franchise. they do appear in some other games as well, Shy Guys. They do appear in a couple of other games. I mean, I think they were originally from Doki Doki Panic, and they were one of the things that, when that game was turned into the North American / European release of Mario 2, they were held over, but I think they do actually appear in the unmodified code of Doki Doki Panic, if memory serves correctly. How you doing, Mr. Ape? Are you well? Good to see you. Figured I'd do the streaming thing, seeing as I'm building. I like building streams. The painting stream is not necessarily something I particularly favour these days, but the building stream I find quite enjoyable, to be honest. It's nice. Building is one of those things that I find really boring, so having like a bunch of questions to answer and stuff while I'm building is really, really helpful for me. Whereas like Hangout and Hobby is in Discord is brilliant, but like it's not really a thing that I do so that people can like ask questions, and you know, we kind of talk about non-hobby mostly in Hangout and Hobby. Just got the glazes and swords and gems on these. Nice! So you've nearly got through them. That's sick. You honestly, I feel like you've pounded through those. I feel like you've made really good pace on them. I am impressed. But yeah, to readdress the topic, yeah, like that ecosystem that GW has created. Like when I first sort of started to come into the internet world of hobby, like the thing is, you have to remember, like I've been into the hobby since 1991, and almost entirely centered around Games Workshop. So like I'm pretty long in the tooth when it comes to the hobby itself, but I haven't really ever explored internet hobby spaces until last year. The only exception sort of being Twitch, and that was because I was a Twitch streamer myself, mostly doing my 2D art, and then sort of towards the end of it doing a bit of mini painting. But I've always been I'm relatively new to the world of sort of the hobby on the internet and the various internet communities. And when I sort of first started to join hobby internet spaces, I was quite loudly and outspokenly very anti-GW ecosystem. Oh, 3 Venom Crawlers, that is rough. I did a Lord Discord and a Venom Crawler like a week apart, and that nearly killed me. I really didn't enjoy it. And that was for one of my own armies, fortunately, so I could cut corners. If that had been a commission, I'd have been crying by the end of it, because obviously you can't cut corners on commissions. Yeah, but yeah, I was like really quite loudly outspoken against GW's ecosystem. And after spending some time in the community, getting to know people, and sort of hearing far more opinions that aren't my own, which is something that, you know, when you hobby in a vacuum, which I have for most of my life, you don't hear many opinions that aren't your own. You know, you hear your friends' opinions, but that's a very small sample size compared to what you hear like on, you know, hobby Twitter, hobby Facebook, that kind of thing. And one of the things I sort of learned quite quickly was that for a lot of people, that ecosystem is actually very comforting. It gives them very clear guidance to an outcome, and at the end of the day, if they're happy with that outcome, that isn't for anyone to say whether it's right or wrong. And so it kind of became a thing that I realized pretty early days that whilst GW's ecosystem might not be something that I like, because I have a lot of artistic experience and a lot of hobby experience, a lot of my hobby experience predates the ecosystem, so I've never really been as dependent on it. So, you know, while like to me that might seem a bit abhorrent, it might seem like it's holding people back, and I do think it holds a lot of people back. But there are also some people that really benefit from it. And so I think, it's important to understand that, and this was definitely a lesson I had to learn the hard way through upsetting people when I didn't mean to upset them. I would make these sort of anti-GW ecosystem posts on social media and stuff like that, and then be really surprised by how defensive people got, like how much people rallied to the defense of GW. And I didn't really understand it at first, and I certainly didn't realize that I was the problem. It took me quite some time to realize that I was the problem. A few months probably of doing this. I'm painting the Orion assault ship at the moment. So much gold to do. Oh no, everybody's just in Trim City. I mean, I have a Chaos Space Marine army and 2 Space Marine armies, so like I understand Trim City. I understand the pain. I get it. I feel your pain. I've been there. If you enjoy the time painting, it doesn't matter the level of work or what you used to do it. The important, right? Exactly. Which is like totally something that I know, totally something that I'm aware of, totally something that I've always been aware of. But I just had this weird cognitive dissonance where I was unable to apply that understanding to the hobby. And so I'm like really pissed off because in my head, I think I'm trying to protect people from being taken advantage of. Like that's how that's why I'm angry. That's why I'm, making these anti-GW posts. And I realised, but it's not about me. It doesn't... My need to protect people and care for people is a manifestation of my insecurity. That's not... it's not something that I should... If my doing that or having that makes other people feel bad, it's a failure anyway. So, maybe I need to rethink my position on this. And I had to really do some kind of soul searching, I guess. And eventually it kind of occurred to me that the ecosystem is a problem. It's a problem insofar as it discourages free thought, and free thought is something that we should all learn to practice. It's beneficial in every aspect of our lives. To come up with an idea for yourself, to have your own thoughts, opinions, and feelings on a subject, but also to remain malleable, to remain willing to learn and expand as a result of that. And the mistake I was making is that sort of protector instinct that I have was actually causing me to behave toxically. Because what I was doing is, in trying to defend people from being taken advantage of, I was making them feel like their hobby was invalidated. And that's obviously A, not my intention, and B, not something I want to continue doing once I realise I'm doing it, right? That's a lesson to be learned from and moved quickly away from. Just a chaplain on bike. He was Trim City too. I say to folks, in every paint line has its pros and cons. Even GW metallics aren't as good as say Viejo or Scale Colour. See, I find that really interesting because whilst I absolutely despise GW silvers and I don't touch them with a barge pole, this stuff, I cannot find a better bright gold in terms of coverage. It needs a lot of thinning. It's not perfect. But I think this stuff gets a really bad rap by association with the rest of GW's terrible metallics. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There are definitely GW paints that are staples of all my painting. Obviously, in my videos, I try to do mostly GW anyway, because that's what most people have. So they feel more comfortable. Your videos feel more approachable if you use stuff that people have. If your videos involve sort of having to go out and purchase things that seem exotic, that tends to put people off of them. So I use mostly GW in my videos, but even when I paint commissions, there are there are GW paints that are staples for me. Jacaro Orange, Mornfang Brown, Avalon Sunset are all ones that spring to mind very quickly. Ironrack Skin, Rakarth Flesh. Yeah, the reds are good. I love the Mephiston Wild Rider Evil Sons kind of triad for highlighting reds, although I've been experimenting a little bit recently with P3's version, which narrows it down to 2 paints and you just mix in the middle. So it's these. So you've got Khador Red Base and Khador Red Highlight, and you just mix them together for your first stage highlight. So it's literally like you lay this down as your mid-tone, then you mix these two together for your first highlight, and then you use this on its own for your second highlight. And that actually looks really, really good. And like previously, I've been very, very heavily sold on GW's reds, but that is something that I've been enjoying. And yes, also Viejo Metallics. In terms of silvers, I don't use anything other than this these days. I use this, and if I need it to be lighter, I mix chrome into it. I literally have dark aluminium and chrome. And I just add extra chrome into the dark aluminium if it needs to be lighter. This is essentially the same silver component as this, but this has got a black component as well. You can see it when they separate. Viejo Black Red is, yeah, that's actually a colour I need to pick up. I've heard a lot of really good things about it. My favourite black is hands down this. Nothing will ever hold a candle to this as far as I'm concerned. Excuse me. This is Art Black from Scale 75. It's a heavy body, but it's designed for miniature painting, so it thins down really, really smoothly. It's actually incredible. It's actually really, really incredible. By far the best coverage black I've ever worked with, but also, as well as being incredible coverage, it's also just really smooth, just like really, really smooth. But yeah, you know, this is I'm trying so hard to stay on point. You'll have to forgive my ADHD brain that loves to tangentialize everything. But this is the thing with the ecosystem, you know, like going back to what Heather said, like it's probably causing her more harm than good at the moment, because she's in a position where she's sort of cornered herself into having to do a bunch of edge highlighting, and she's finding it really miserable. It's, you know, it's causing her to have hobby fatigue, and that's one of the areas where the GW ecosystem really lets people down, because it sort of narrowly draws them into a certain set of techniques that are designed not for the painting experience, but for the sale of paint. Totally makes sense for them to do that, totally a good idea from a business perspective to do that, but not the best way to look after your customer in the long run, because you end up in situations like that, where you have really bad hobby fatigue as a result of having to do too much of the same very difficult technique. And edge highlighting is undoubtedly one of the hardest techniques in mini painting. You know, the difference between passable edge highlighting and good edge highlighting is a fucking chasm. I would describe my edge highlighting as passable on its way to good, and I'm regularly complimented on it, and I don't even think it's close to good yet. It's nowhere near Darren Latham level, for example. It's on its way. It's heading in the right direction, but still need to improve my precision. But then, you know, on the other side of the hobby fatigue, it also instills a lot of confidence and takes a lot of the you know, sort of agonizing thought process out of the hobby. And realizing that and understanding that has kind of enabled me to feel a bit closer to GW again, you know, to not feel quite so much like they're the bad guy, which in turn has allowed me to sort of feel more passionate about their game and their product again. And so, you know, overall that's been a really good thing, but I had to check myself on that asshole moment that I was having, and I had to learn from it and improve myself in order to realize that whilst I may not personally think the way they do it is the way it should be done, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's strictly a bad thing. There can be some good in things that could otherwise be perceived as a problem. Favorite Viejo color is terracotta. Interesting. Of course, if you don't know about these two, these are the secret sauce. Kirioth actually told me off the other day for recommending this to someone, because it's just secret sauce. It does everything. Put it this way, we'll just go back to that ogre a second. The yellows, the blues, and the leather colours are all highlighted with mixtures of the same colour, sunny skin tone, which is this. It is without a doubt the most universal highlighter you will ever find in your life. It's just magic sauce. It just, you can just mix it into anything and it makes interesting highlight colours that look good. So highly recommend a bottle of sunny skin tone to anyone getting into miniature painting. Mahogany, good shout. It's so boring, bless you, Heather. My Element Games order just got dispatched. New paints on the way. Nice. What'd you order, Phrase? What new paints did you order? I have edge highlights in my style, but I use it for extreme hard edges and only on upward edges. Yeah. It's very similar to my thinking on it. Although I like to also use it for like bordering with a shadow. So you get that really extreme contrast. I love the look of that. Again, I'm sorry to keep bringing it up, but it's the technique I used on the skin for this, so it's a miniature that I can illustrate it with. But you see how every time there's a crease in the skin with the deepest shadow, I've run a tiny little edge highlight up in against it. It just really defines that border, creates a really big jump in contrast, and that's just very satisfying to the eye. It's one of the reasons why this skin has had a lot of compliments. A lot of people probably don't realise that that's why they find it so interesting to look at. But the reason this looks so interesting is because it's got those big sudden jumps of contrast. Hey, Scale 75 Art Black. That's the stuff. Remember, we should be getting some kind of referral code from Lazy Dragon when their website is finished, Phrase. So if you want GW stuff, you will be able to get it from Lazy Dragon once the website is done. I feel like GW's improved in the past few years compared to what they were like when I first started. Yeah, improved. They've made progress in a lot of key areas, definitely. Like the ecosystem thing is, it's only a problem if you don't get what you want from it, right? If the ecosystem satisfies your needs as a hobbyist, then that isn't a problem. And in most other areas, they have made a lot of improvements, and it is unfair to not acknowledge that, which is kind of what I needed to get my own head around when I started mixing in hobby internet circles more. That was kind of one of the things that I needed to understand. You like the Ogre, Heather? Yeah, I'm very proud of him. It's some of the best work I've done recently. And that's not to say that I couldn't have done better. There are obviously areas on it that I look at and know what I could do better. But when you're painting stuff for yourself as a commission painter, you've got to make decisions as to how much time you're going to put into that thing, because it's time that you're not working. And the only way I can even justify a painting for myself these days is if I make some kind of content off it, usually. So there is content coming that relates to that ogre. Frosted products can be a joke sometimes. Again, that's a tough one. David, because a lot of people have done analysis of cost versus inflation and found that actually a lot of stuff is cheaper now than it was historically. We just look at the number and we don't consider the value of currency. yes, like, I'm not saying you're wrong. You're absolutely not incorrect in what you're saying. There are definitely there are 100% items that are priced just ridiculously. There are things in the GW catalogue that should not be as expensive as they are. This is the wrong arm. This is the arm that's drawing the sword from the scabbard. He needs a different arm. And, like, there is absolutely validity to people's frustrations with GW's pricing. You know, some of it is so silly, because obviously they've adopted a pricing model now where they place a premium on miniatures that you aren't going to buy many of, in order to, you know, like characters, for example, are brutally expensive in terms of what you're actually getting for your money, because you're only going to buy one for your army, and you know, because they use that model now, it means that a lot of folk who are interested in collecting more elite armies feel like they're sort of being shafted a bit. I'm not even sure if that's the right arm, you know. Got a worrying feeling that that's not even the right arm. I'm just going to pop one of these shields off a second just to use as a checker to make sure, like, that shields will still sit on and stuff. I think this is... Okay, no, it's fine. It just sits directly in front of his body, but that's fine. Shields are all getting painted separately anyway, so I don't mind if they sit directly in front of his body. Hey, Pingu, how you doing? Yeah, the Necron Warriors box is it's a very bizarre example. Like, when you buy Necrons in the box sets, because you're getting box set based discounts, they work out really cheap. But when you buy them as a box set on their own, they seem brutally overpriced. No worries, Felix. You take care. Yeah, I agree, Heather. I think you should see more dark skin tones. I mean, like, it's no secret that the Warhammer demographic leans towards white males. And, you know, people naturally fall into painting things based on what they, you know, on their normal. So, you know, if you're a white male from a white family, then, you know, you probably are just going to passively, without even thinking about it, be more inclined to paint white skin tones. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's nice to explore other skin tones and do more things. And, you know, for me, I guess I'm in that sort of uniquely privileged position of being a white male from a mixed race family. And so, you know, having a multicultural upbringing means that white skin tones are not the only normal for me, I guess. So it's just a little bit easier for me to kind of think, oh, I'm going to paint this guy as a black man, or, you know, I'm going to paint this guy as Asian, or whatever. Paint some salamanders. Well, see, salamanders, canonically, to me, they used to have actual black skin, and that was what I really liked. Because that was interesting, like painting, you know, like charcoal black skin, like literally actual black, not black as in, you know, what we call black skin. And that was really interesting to me as a painting thing. Whereas, like, dark skin for me is just if I fancy painting a model with dark skin, I'll paint it with dark skin. It's just, you know, it's a completely passive thought process for me. I bought a dark skin Escher character to paint purely to practice painting non-IC1 and IC2 skin shades. Yeah, it's a good call. It's a really good call. It's super fun and interesting. Take care, Leonie. Thanks for popping in. It's super fun and interesting to me to just experiment with stuff. I just like experimenting with stuff, and you know, skin tones are one of those things that, as you get a bit more advanced in painting, there's kind of a bit of room for adventure there. I think, you know, when you first start out, skin tones are quite scary, and you really want just like super simple recipes, things that just, you know, are passable and aren't too difficult to do. And I really actually think that that's all you're really asking for from skin recipes in the early days. But, you know, when you've been painting for nearly 30 years, it's kind of, I'd like a bit of an adventure here, you know. I'd like something that's a bit interesting to think about and muse over, and painting non-white skin tones definitely helps provide that for me. Yeah, it's odd, isn't it, Mugs? The current pricing policy is strange. Very strange. Like, 30 quid for 3 miniatures or 30 quid for... I mean, Blood Bowl teams. Take Blood Bowl teams as an example. That Ogre team is 12 Nobblers and 4 Ogres, and it's 26 quid. Like, that doesn't line up with 40k's pricing model at all. It's just odd. It's really hard to track. I have a friend who works in mass production, casting and injection molding, and in GW's defense, the casts only have a finite number of uses and are a significant percentage of I totally understand that, like, casts have to be remade, and that it's expensive to remake them. I totally get that. But, like, on the other side of that, in terms of how miniatures are costed and how that cost differential translates to retail price, like, it's really hard to know if that tracks or not, you know? Because at the end of the day, like, how detailed a cast is doesn't affect how much the cast costs to reproduce. They use the same casting technology for everything. Everything gets created using the same machining, the same design, the same production methodology. It's all completely universal because that is ultimately cheaper, and it's also more efficient. You know, they don't have to change up components on machines between different processes and stuff. They just have to change the mold. So, like, every miniature, you know, even if it was just a sphere of undetailed plastic, if it was made using the same process as the rest of their miniatures, it would cost the same to replace the cast. So the number of minis that they're going to print, essentially, I say print, I use the term print because it's a holdover from Magic, but the number of a particular miniature that they print is what's going to determine how quickly that cast is going to wear out, not how detailed it is or how big it is or anything like that. You know, those things might have, like, micro relationships with the lastability of a cast, but the main thing that's going to actually influence how long it lasts is how many they're going to print of that miniature. Which should mean that the cost per miniature premium is weighted onto squads and that characters are dirt cheap, which is exactly what they used to do. Characters used to be dirt cheap. You could pick up, like, a general for your army would cost like 4 quid, but a squad box would cost like a tenner, for example. Or maybe even at that point, maybe 4 quid for a general, and, like, you might be on like 15 quid for a squad box by that point. What do you mean, Ape? I'm not understanding what you're disagreeing with. Like, what I'm saying is that the process of making a cast costs X amount. Like, sprues are all a standard size, right? So the machine that makes the mold is making a mold for this size. They do sometimes have the double adjoined sprues, because you can see this was originally adjoined to its counterpart. Like, this is actually what a sprue looks like when it goes into cast, right? They're all this size now. Every single kit runs off of this size. I'm still not following how making fewer, like, I get that making fewer would cause the average cost of a cast to be higher, on the assumption that, like, 100% usage was present. But if you're only, like, let's just say, we have to work with arbitrary figures, right? Because we don't have the real figures. So let's say you're going to make 10,000 of a character, and a cast lasts for 5,000. So you need to make 2 casts for that character, right? But a squad in the same, like, so a character is done on a half sprue, yeah? A character's done on that, usually. And sometimes you'll get 2 of those. So what they'll actually be casting will still be that, but it will contain like 2 of that character per cast, yeah? Because everything that they cast starts off at that size. Like, that is the size of a sprue. Except for the stuff that's made in China, like the scenery and stuff. That we've seen that comes on bigger sprues. But essentially, everything breaks down into some sort of division of that, yeah? So, if they need to make 2 wastages worth of a cast to print 10,000, they actually get 2 of that character on one of these anyway. Oh, yeah. To recreate a cast is less than to create a cast scratch note. Yeah, no, I understand that. I understand that. But what I'm saying is that, like, this is say a squad of 5, and if we made 5,000 of these, that's 5,000 squads of 5. If we made 5,000 characters on this format, the number of casts that it would use, you would be getting 2 characters per cast. Because, you know, say like your average Space Marine commander, for example, uses like one of these split down the middle, essentially. So you'd get 2 copies of him per cast. So 5,000 of these as a squad would make 5,000 squads of 5, but 5,000 of these as a character would make 10,000 of that character. That's what I'm saying. So, because everything is cast on this template, and it's just however many permutations of the miniature they can fit into this template. So what I'm saying is that in terms of cost of casting, it doesn't equate to the number of miniatures, because it depends on what they're actually producing. So, like, let's just say it costs, I don't know, 100,000. Again, I'm talking arbitrary numbers. But if we say it costs 100,000 to create a cast of this size, then it's going to make 5,000 squads before it wears out, but it's going to make 10,000 characters before it wears out. So what I'm saying is that the weighting of the pricing should be towards the squads. The squad should be expensive and the characters should be cheap. But these days they do it the other way around, and the reason they do it the other way around is because you're going to buy fewer of the characters and more of the squads, so it means that they make more money overall. It means that the margins are higher. Like, it makes sense, but it is a thing that the community has picked up on and isn't particularly happy about. Now, for me personally, I don't really care. The way I see it is, if I can afford the miniature and I want the miniature, I buy the miniature, right? I don't trouble myself over companies' profit margins, because as a business person, I understand that businesses have to make money in order to continue doing what they do. And if you want them to continue to do more and bigger and better, They need spare money, which is what we call profit. If a business is only making enough money to keep itself going, which a lot of people seem to think is what businesses should do, a lot of people seem to call profit greed, which is very silly. If a business is only making enough money to keep itself going, then they're never going to be able to continue to do more and better of the thing that you love. So for me personally, I don't worry about how much profit companies make. But what the point I was trying to make with that massive sidebar into sprues was that the thing, like people scrutinize GW for how they make their money. But at the end of the day, the reason they make their money that way is because it makes them more money. And as much as people like to bang on about like they've got a board of directors to satisfy and stuff like that, the assumption that is the be-all and end-all of how and why they do business is just such a fucking smokescreen. Hey Dave, how you doing, mate? Like, businesses don't just make profit to satisfy their investors. Businesses make profit to be able to continue to expand and do bigger and better things, and ultimately to therefore serve their customers better. That's like one of the primary functions of business. You don't start a business because you don't want to do something for people. You know, if you have a steel galvanizing company, you do that because you want to provide that product to customers of that product. You know, it's like, it's a really weird assertion that businesses only exist to like milk money from people. It's a very weird way of thinking. I find it quite hard to understand, but it's one of the things that GW come under a lot of scrutiny for that I don't think is necessarily deserved. That was kind of ultimately what I was getting at, is that making hobby products is fucking expensive, and maximizing the profitability of that allows them to continue to pour out all of these new releases for all of these games. You know, we have to remember that when they first started out, they had 2 games. There was Lord of the Rings and Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And that was all they had, and then they made a few licensed things. Hey Chad, how you doing? Painting miniatures has been proven to improve your mental health. I'm happy to spend money I can afford to keep my mental health in a positive place. Exactly, Mugs. This is literally exactly my thinking. If I can afford the miniature and I want the miniature, I buy the miniature, and I don't care if GW are making an absolute fucking mint off it or if they make a penny per copy. I just don't care. Because to me, the miniature isn't about its price. Arguing over price when it comes to luxuries, commodities, is like entitlement at its fucking worst. And I cannot abide it. It's something I personally find really, really painful to witness. It really bugs me. Now, there are other sides to that. Value for money is still a real thing, and value for money is a thing that we should all seek. You know, for example, like, don't pay 20 quid for a set of GW clippers when these Chinese ones are better and cost 8 quid, right? But that's not the same thing. That's like, lots of companies make these, so therefore finding the best value proposition is important. Only GW make this. So if you want this, shut up and pay GW's price for it, right? And I'm not saying that to like try and be abrasive. I'm not saying that to try and, you know, wind people up. But like, it really is so entitled to expect a company to provide you with a luxury for less money than they deem appropriate in order to satisfy their ambitions. Like, they know what money they need to make and how they need to make it. That's their job as a business. It's not your job to tell them what's the right amount of money for them to be making. You know, that's kind of where it grates on me. I don't like how GW increased prices on existing lines. New or updated models, fair enough, but GW are branching in more games and TV series, and the money has to come from somewhere. Yeah, this is it. Like, price increases across the board, though. Again, things like materials inflation, a lot of people don't appreciate how much that can be a thing. Also, labour inflation. Like, you have to give your workforce a pay rise every single year equal to the inflation rate, for example. which means that prices have to go up every year. And businesses that don't put their prices up every year are absorbing that. Now, for a company like GW that's got such a massive workforce, they probably can't really justify constantly absorbing that. Because the thing that you have to remember is that businesses don't operate off of GP percentages. They operate off of pounds in the till. It's not about how much percentage of profit you made in that year. It's about how much cash flow the business has running through it. A business can, for example, like, say 2019, ABC business makes 2 million and in profit, but their running costs for 2020 are coming out of that money, and their running costs are like 1 million, which means that until they've made another 1 million, their cash flow is actually half of what their profit margin appears to be, right? The actual amount of available cash in the business is half of what their gross profit appears to be, because your costs for running that year don't wait for you to make your profit. They don't wait for it to clear in the bank. Your costs are your costs, and they come out when they come out. Now, if you have to give a pay rise to your entire workforce because of inflation, that's a cost that comes out every single month. It has to happen. You don't have a choice. So putting prices up is like the only way you can ensure that there is cash flow available for cost increases like that. And inflation increases also mean that all your suppliers are putting their price up, which means that your raw plastic material goes up in cost. It means that your paints go up in cost. It means that everything that you don't personally make yourself goes up in cost. And everything that you do make yourself, the raw materials go up in cost. A more consistent pricing structure would help, though. Something that felt more transparent would allay a lot of people's concerns. So I agree with you, Moosecloth. It's a bit steep getting started, but I buy from third-party retailers and get hours of pleasure from painting it and eventually loans. But exactly, this is it. It's like, for me, just being able to sit and chat to people about Warhammer is so fucking nice. And if I wasn't involved in the hobby, I wouldn't have that. Like, I couldn't do this. This for me, the reason that no monetization goes on these streams, and the reason that I don't do them in my Discord, is because for me, this isn't work. This is me just hanging out and having a good time while I work. I love doing this, right? And the hobby gives me that. If I wasn't a hobbyist, I wouldn't have something to just sit here and hang out and stream. I wouldn't have a thing to just chat to people about. Or at least it wouldn't be this thing. It'd be something else that I'd be pouring my disposable into instead. Got started in 40k just as lockdown started. That's really unfortunate. So you've not played yet. Well, Heather, lots of meetups are going to happen once lockdowns are lifted, and Tabletop Simulator is also a thing, Heather. In my Discord, we play on Tabletop Simulator a fair bit, and that's actually a really nice way to learn the game because you don't have to commit to buying the miniatures before you try playing with them. So there are ways, and there are going to be more ways once the world opens up again. Across games like Magic and Warhammer, there's an open source model like underground communities where folks are bashing, modding, casting that could be embraced and supported and would grow the game. I agree. Yeah, I agree. Alternatives, on-ramps that help people grow into highest quality GW product lines by sharing standards for more interoperability between company and consumer. You might have to unpack that second comment for me. There was a lot of words in there that I don't necessarily understand. Fair point on the cost of living increases, etc. I think we could all do with buying less, paying a little more, and getting rid of those piles of shame. Yeah, and this is the other thing, is like rabid, voracious consumerism in the hobby. Like, it's a luxury item, and we're out here spending most of our disposable on it. It's like, can you actually complain about cost increases? I don't know. Personally, I think it's a little rich. It's true. And also, bear in mind, Mugs, Heather paints with her offhand as well, which is fucking ridiculous. Like, she's really, really leveled up fast. Maybe I need to build more than paint this week. The orc straps are slow going, yeah. Make it easier for hobbyists to make cool stuff as they work up to buying the best stuff. Yeah, like maybe more conversion kits and stuff like that. Like they used to really lean into converting as a part of the hobby. And then when they realised it wasn't profitable for people to be making playable game pieces out of deodorant bottles and shit like that, they started to really move away from that. But what they could do is lean more into actually manufacturing conversion kits and stuff like that, which I think would be really cool. I think that'd be something that people would really, really dig. And they already do a bit of that, so, you know. I'm proud that my pile of shame doesn't grow that fast. James, I am so jealous of how you hobby. Like, you take as much time as you want over your paint jobs. You only buy shit that you intend to use. You're really controlled over what armies you show interest in and stuff like that. You are like peak hobby performance. I'm so jealous of you. Malleus, yeah, no, I totally agree with that. If they've discontinued something and you cannot get it, I have no problem in going to third party at all. No problem whatsoever. At the moment, I'm currently talking to someone about speccing up a 3D printed upscale of a original Rogue Trader Contemptor. Obviously, you cannot buy the original Rogue Trader Contemptor from Games Workshop anymore. They are not losing any money by me going to someone who sells this third-party product. And having it upscaled to the correct size for a Contemptor means that it's reasonable to use it as a stand-in for a Contemptor, which is what I want to do. So, because I love Contemptors and I love the cheesiness of that original Rogue Trader design. It's just so silly looking. I love it. So something that I really want to do, and it's not a product that, like, Games Workshop can't lose any money from me doing that, because they don't make that product anymore. So, you know, there's no need for any guilt there. Helps avoid hobby debt, I guess. Yeah, there is that. There is that. I mean, I honestly do really recommend checking out Tabletop Simulator, though, for learning to play. If you wanna get an idea of you know, how much playing interests you, Tabletop Simulator is a really good way to start, because it'll enable you to kind of know how much you enjoy the game before you commit to, like, where you spend your cash. For example, like, a lot of people who really just love painting but don't really enjoy playing the game never collect armies. I've collected very few armies in my life because I only really got into playing the game when I got into my 20s. I was very much just a painter / collector prior to that. And, you know, I had sort of one small army, an Eldar army, but I never really collected armies when I was young. A, couldn't afford it, and B, just wasn't really interested in that side of the hobby. So, you know, if you don't enjoy the games, or if you don't have a desire to play the games, then that can really sort of direct how you collect. And playing a bit on Tabletop Simulator is a good way to get an idea of that. Cries in painting Skaven, so much to paint. Yeah, it's a big army. It's a big army, you get a lot of troops. 12,000 clan rats. About 80 to build, let alone paint guard. I almost cried when I had to paint 70 Imperial Guard infantry. I really, really didn't have a good time with that. Rogue Trader, so much 90s cheese. It's the good shit. Hey Joe, how you doing? I'm building your Custodes, or Custodes at the moment, mate. How are you? Does it have a solo mode? No, but, like, there's loads of communities out there. You have to 1v1, but that's one of the best ways to learn, honestly, because it's such an overly complex game. Like, having an experienced player to help you really, really helps. Skaven are the best fantasy army. I'm totally biased with a small Skaven collection. As a D&D 5e player, really wish they'd had a Skaven-like monster race in. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, that they've never really done that. Like, they had Ratmen in 2nd edition that were literally just called Ratmen. But they never really leaned into them as a race. They never really did anything around them. I haven't played a game since 7th. Wow, mugs, man. Come join my Discord. Come play with us. It's really good fun. It's like, playing on TTS, honestly, it genuinely does feel quite similar to me. It's clunkier than playing in real life, but it's also faster. You can get games done quite a bit quicker. I think once you get smooth with the UI, which you know I feel a lot more confident with the UI now, so it makes me feel like I can play faster. It's good. It's really enjoyable. When I heard of Doom Wheels one day, that'd be fun. Batch painted 20 Storm Vermin last weekend. I'm never painting in more than 5 at a time. Yeah, 5 at a time is my limit. I totally get that. Totally get that. 5 at a time is like the most I ever want to batch paint. It's it starts to become very unenjoyable for me beyond that. Stop collecting Guard due to the number of models. That's a shame. Guard are actually my favourite army. Like, absolute favourite army. But I sold my old collection because the list that I actually wanted to play was so different to the miniatures that I had. I was just missing so many parts. It was like, well, I'm basically going to have to rebuy this anyway. So what I did was I sold it with a view to... I'll probably hold out until they redo the basic Guard squad box. And then when we get a new basic Guard squad box, that's probably when I'll do my new Guard collection. Because I really want to do something really fucking cool with Imperial Guard. I love them so much. But the list that I had was just unplayable for 9th edition. It just wasn't good. Like, it had a couple, like, you know, I had a few tank commanders and stuff like that. But I used to play Swarm Infantry, and Swarm Infantry just isn't how you play Guard now. It's just not, you know... Your toughness 3, 5-up save troop just doesn't have what it takes for OBSEC. Like, you need other ways to hold objectives, which means you need to like lean into playing more transports to protect those troops, to act as mobile screens for them. And I, you know, didn't have like 6 chimeras, for example. Just shit like that meant that it wasn't the time to play the Guard list that I had. I've been obsessed with the Gaunt's Ghost Caiaphas Kane books. Nearly started with Guard, but infantry models are so old. Yeah, I'm a huge Gaunt's Ghost and Caiaphas Kane fan. And that's one of the things that actually really renewed my love for Guard. Guard were always one of my favourite armies anyway. When they were like a super varied army, back when they were mostly metal, I fucking loved them. But reading Caiaphas Kane and Gaunt's Ghost is what like really jump-started me back into I fucking love Guard. And actually, what I would love to do is I'd love to do a mixed Guard army with like Tanith first and oh fuck, what are they called? The tank regiment that joins them in Honor Guard. What's the tank regiment from Honor Guard called? Can anyone remember? In my head I keep saying the Fantine, but that's because I'm currently listening to Double Eagle, which the Fantine do join with the Tanith first much later on. Sorry, no, it's quite early on, isn't it? In part of the Sabbat Worlds campaign, but it's not the Fantine. The Fantine are the airborne regiment. They're like the paratroopers and the pilots and stuff. It's the Tank Legion, and I'm struggling to remember their name. No, the Hyakins that was Gaunt's original legion that he was a member of. The Hyakin regiment was that was who Gaunt started out with when he received his promotion to Commissar. He was a Commissar cadet. Well, second the TTS, good vibes. I played a couple dozen games and it's been a great introduction to Warhammer. Yeah, still need to get on that TTS fun train. Pingu, we would love to have you. You're already in the Discord as well, so it's a thing that you can take advantage of. It's all the lore from listening to the Black Library audiobooks that got me into an army in the unit. It's got a lot of inspiration from the Night Lords trilogy. The Night Lords trilogy are wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I've quite recently listened to those, and I've recently picked up a commission for a bunch of Night Lords. This was the test piece for them. So I'm with you on that, being high on the Night Lords. The Fallout and Elder Scrolls games are both games that I really want to check out, because I love Bethesda video games. There's an official version of the starter set for free on TTS as well. Oh, that's really interesting. Skaven vehicles are very cool. They are very cool. Lots of planky wooden, barely held together shambliness. I just need to update the Doom Flayers. Doom Flayers? I don't know what Doom Flayers are. But I don't know a lot about Skaven, so I'm assuming that's a Skaven unit. When I played Guard, back when a single troop choice was 25 models minimum. If you're playing Swarm Infantry of 120 models, it plays 9 for... Yeah, but that was the thing, is that I was playing this... That was like... I was playing 70 infantry. And then a big chunk of Russes. So this was the point, is like, to make a good 9th list, it was either paint like the same amount of infantry again, which I really didn't want to do, and then sideline loads of the other components of the army, and then have to buy a few more bits of like artillery and stuff to fill in gaps that I didn't have in my collection. It essentially ended up the 8th Pardus Armoured Regiment. That sounds correct. Yeah, Pardus, the Pardus Armoured. That sounds correct. Yeah, like this was the thing. I basically would have had to pretty much build the army again anyway. I'd had to paint the same amount of infantry I'd already painted, and when I wasn't very happy with how that infantry was painted as well, it just seemed like a better strat for the time being was to get rid of the army and then come back to it. Hopefully when there's some new releases. So fingers crossed there will be some new releases. I had 2 Guard armies, 2,000 points of decock and 1,000 points of fully airborne Elysians. Oh, that would be fun. 1,000 points of fully airborne Elysians. I would love to play airborne Scions. I wish that was a good army for 9th, because maybe I'd just fucking play it anyway. Airborne Scions would be a fun army. Did a custom regiment by putting Admech Vanguard heads on the Cadian bodies with Scions backpacks, but it's expensive. That sounds expensive. Holy shit. You're currently listening to Caves of Ice. That's really interesting, because I was actually going to start listening to Caves of Ice for the second time last night. Caves of Ice is one of the Caiaphas Cain books, for those that don't know. I was actually going to start listening to it last night, and I started listening to Double Eagle instead. So we very nearly ended up on the same book, Pingu. I don't think it's the Narmenians. The Pardus Armoured 8th, that sounds right. That sounds right. Let's do a bit of Googling. Hang on. Gaunts, Ghosts, Honor, Guard. We should be able to find a synopsis. That's not a very good synopsis, Google. It's the 3rd book. Oh, it's the 4th book, sorry. The Battle of Hagia, yes, I know that. Why is it not mentioned anywhere? Weird. It's just not mentioned who the tank regiment are. Like, I've actually got the Gaunts Ghost Wikipedia open, and it's like just straight up not even mentioned in the Gaunts Ghost Wikipedia. That's so bizarre. It is the first appearance of Ku, though, the bastard. I hate Ku. That's like one character who's like he's so well written as a character. Like I just absolutely despised him from the moment he came into the books. Let's check the Lexicanum wiki. Nope. Like, no mention anywhere of who this regiment are. It's so weird. Let's just try adding tank regiment to the search. The Pardue tank regiment. Pardue tank regiment. Yeah, it is. It's the 8th Pardues. Yeah, it's the murder scene. I won't say too much because I don't want to spoiler it for anyone. But the murder scene at the end of one of the books, that was like the first moment in a very, very long time where I was listening to an audiobook or reading a book or just, you know, taking in a story at all where it like really emotionally bothered me. Just like who they choose to kill off and how they kill that person off, and Q's involvement in it and everything just really messed with me. Really, really messed with me. I was a very sad camper. Is Double Eagle good? Is it actually good? My best mate's favourite author is Dan Abnett. Surprised me giving the first edition of Double Eagle that I got signed by Abnett when I met him with a personal message. Oh, that's lovely. That's really nice. The edge highlighting is done, as in I've done as much as I can be asked. Such a well-written scene. Yeah, no, it's an incredibly well-written scene. It's just fucking heart-wrenching. It's just absolutely heart-wrenching. Like, I actually honestly thought that there's like a moment where I thought it was going to have a happy ending, and I'm like, oh shit, it's going to be okay. And then it's like, it's not going to be okay. Damn, it's not going to be okay. It was yeah, it was hard to listen to. I do everything through Audible, so I listen to my Gaunt's Ghost. I don't read it. But god damn, that was a moment. Just finished the Last Chances series, but I didn't connect with it because literally everyone is an arse. Yeah, I the fact that it's not on Audible is probably why I've never really had any interest in it. But it's the Guard series that I don't hear a lot of love for as well. I bought 4 of the Gaunt's Ghost models from a hobby Discord friend: Gaunt, Dorden, Milo, and a random ghost. But I'm saving this. Yeah, I really, really want to paint those models. I keep looking at eBay listings and like maybe I should start grabbing these while they're still around, because they're only going to get rarer and they're only going to get more expensive. And Gaunt's Ghosts is without a doubt one of the most popular novel series that that GW has ever even thought about creating. So I may have to follow you on that one and pick some up myself. Yeah, I'd really, really like to paint. There's a few that I'd really like to paint. Mad Larkin would be a fun one. Although, the way I picture Mad Larkin in my head, I don't think it's the same as the miniature, to be fair. It's one of the nice things about books, isn't it? Is that we all have slightly unique mental envisionings of the characters. Like Discworld is the other thing that I've read quite a lot of, and when I first saw a illustration of Rincewind, he did not look how I imagined him to look at all. But yeah, no, I would relish the opportunity to paint some Gaunt's Ghosts. It's a shame, really, that they're only available as the old metals. It'd be really nice if somebody third party would step in and make them, make modern versions of them, because I feel like with how modelling technology is now, we could do them a lot more justice. Like, the original metals they're not awful miniatures by any measure. Like, by no stretch of the imagination are they embarrassing, but in modern resin kits they would be nicer. Using a little bit of Tamiya cement there to actually assist with the cleanup. That's something people don't often realise with Tamiya cement that you can do, but it'll actually smooth off very slight mould lines and imperfections. Like, so if where you're scraping you accidentally kind of key the area a bit, which can just sometimes happen when you're scraping, if you just touch a bit of thin cement over the area, it'll actually smooth it back off and remove the key, which can be really nice. Yeah, I knew that miniatures existed. I've not actually seen them, but I did know that they existed. I've not followed Discord for a long time. If I wasn't such a fucking hobbyhead these days, Discord would probably be what I'd be listening to on Audible, because I used to love Tony Robinson's Discord readings. As a kid, you used to be able to get them on tape and CD. Or when I was a kid, you used to be able to get them on tape and CD. And I had a few of them back then. And as I understand it, some of them have been digitised on Audible. That's why I'm very wary of tele-adaptations, yeah. I know what the characters look and sound like in my head. I mean, to be fair, one thing I have to say is Toby Longworth is a fucking absolute master of the highest degree when it comes to voice acting. Toby Longworth's work on the Gaunt's Ghosts audio series is way better than anything my head could have done. In terms of how he characterises everyone. Like, he's got quite a deep voice, so he's not great at doing sort of female presenting voices, and he even manages to muddle his way through the main female characters without making them sound ridiculous. Like some of his female characters, like if you follow Toby specifically as a narrator, you'll know that he does most of Dan Abnett's stuff, which means that he's done Ravener and Eisenhorn as well, which are also two absolutely incredible series. And for example, his voicing for Patience Kiss is like terrible. it just sounds so odd. It's just a really odd voice. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's one of the ones that he's probably not happy with in his career. But like, one blemish on an otherwise impeccable record of incredible voice acting, you know, I think we can accept it. You have a spare Gaunt model? Oh, please do. Grab me on social media and I will give you a forwarding address. That would be absolutely amazing, and I will make a video on it. I will make a video for your enjoyment, because that would be a wonderful opportunity and would also be fun content. Totally forgot about the Elysians. Now I'm sad. A damn shame. Here's hoping they get a comeback in plastic. Yeah, I think the problem with Elysians is that they were kind of superseded a bit by Scions, weren't they? Like, the Elysian Shock Trooper is kind of very adjacent to what Scions... Because Scions are from Elysia, aren't they? If I remember correctly. And I think the current model line is very sort of Special Forces kind of Rainbow Six CG kind of feeling to me, which is a bit of a shame, because I think the original inspiration was probably a lot more in line with like the British Paras and stuff like that. But you know, like, inspirations change over time, and I totally understand why they change the aesthetics of a lot of stuff. Like, I get why they do it, even if it can be a bit unpalatable sometimes. I understand why they do it. Board Game Shop in Reading had some. They are metal, good sculpts, and are based on the illustrations. Toby Longworth is the best voice actor GW have. I wholeheartedly agree. I wholeheartedly agree, Muggs. Toby is fucking incredible. Apparently he's also a stand-up comedian. I really need to seek out some of his comedy, because apparently he's also a stand-up comedian. And if he's as good at that as he is at voice acting, then holy shit, he must be a funny guy. And that's something you really don't get from his voice acting either, because the stuff that he does is all so serious. So like, it would be really refreshing to see him in that different way. But yeah, his work in particular on Eisenhorn and Gaunt's Ghosts is just something else. Just something else. I have consistently just been wowed by him. And I'm gonna do this guy kind of with his shield sort of slightly horizontal, maybe. Go down a bit. His other arms come off. Let's not have any of that. That arm falling off business. Thank you, Mr. Custard. Can we go that low safely? Having a shield on hand to check the fit is always a good idea. I want to kind of do some funny angles with some of the shields. Sent me a PM. Thank you so much. Thanks, Moosecloth. I am very interested. Chad, welcome to the Patreon. I don't get notifications through the live thing anymore. It doesn't do that with this version of Streamlabs. Oh, no way. Moosecloth, I had no idea that was you. It's one of my old friends from back home. I had no idea that was you. That's really funny. Scions are generic versions of the old Cadian Cassican models. They replaced the Stormtrooper model. Right, okay. He's friends with Bill Bailey and was in an episode of the IT Crowd as well. He's the guy who ran the anger management course. I didn't know that either! Holy shit! Where did Toby go? Jenny really likes the IT Crowd. I don't really... I don't not like it. I just never really got into it. I've watched a few episodes with Jenny because she likes it. And actually found it, you know, it's funny. I don't in any way dislike it. It's just not a thing I'm really into. Which is odd, because it probably should be my kind of humour. It's probably the kind of thing that if I gave it enough time, I would probably really like it. But as is typical of me, and again, it's a very ADHD trait, but I can't really ever, I can't split my sort of love and focus and enthusiasm between too many things at once. I tend to have to sort of really intensely love one or two things, and then sort of move on for a while. It's just, you know, brain chemistry shit. It's just like how I'm wired, which can be like, I've had to learn really hard not to do that with personal relationships. That's like a big area of personal growth for me, is to not treat personal relationships that way. And I'm still not the best at it. I still sometimes just stop talking to friends, not meaning to, like I don't care about them any less or want to be around them any less or value them any less or anything like that. I just run out of like headspace, and the headspace that they occupy ends up being the headspace that gets kind of assigned to something else. And it is just, unfortunately, a byproduct of ADHD brain chemistry. It's fucking annoying. Like, I really don't like it. It's one of the things about myself that I find really gross, and I wish I wasn't like that. But unfortunately, it's also something that requires constant conscious effort to address, and so therefore, you slip, you make mistakes. And there's definitely personal relationships that I've let slide that I shouldn't have let slide as a result of that. But I think, also a lot of my closest friends who really know me also know what I'm like, and know that however far I drift, I'll be back eventually. But when it comes to sort of the things that I'm passionate about, from a hobby or creative perspective, the only things that have really been constant in my life are food and Warhammer, and I've never really fallen out of love with them. I've certainly had an extended period of not being involved with Warhammer, but it was never out of a lack of love, it was out of a lack of time. Basically the whole time that I was chefing, the sort of 10-year period that I was chefing, I just couldn't have possibly ever maintained a hobby like this. I mean, even now, to be fair, like, if it wasn't that I was able to turn this hobby into my job, I wouldn't be able to really be very involved. If I was still doing traditional 2D painting, I would have to, like, be really, really scaled back on how involved in the hobby I am compared to doing it for a living. But the fact that miniature painting is part of my living means that I can sort of be much more into the hobby. I'm such a compartmental eater-painter relationship. But yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Is like being able to compartmentalize is a lot more, I think, a lot more healthy. Personally, it's something I've always sort of struggled with a little, and that's what I'm really trying to learn to do. Is to, that's a super helpful framing, though, to think of relationships that way. Much appreciated over here. Oh, I'm glad it resonates, Chad. One of the nice things about streaming is that if you don't have an active conversation topic to talk about, you can just kind of ramble about what's in your head, right? And it fills the silence of the stream, but also, like, every now and again, the odd person might just resonate or click with something that you've said, and that creates an opportunity to initiate another sort of active topic of conversation. And it's something that, as a streamer, I've always thought is a good thing to do. And even though I don't really stream these days, it's something I still try to do on the rare occasions that I stream. So really, all you're hearing is just my sort of chain of thought. Is the saying chain of thought or train of thought? I've heard both a lot in my life, and I never know which one is the actual and which one is just something I've heard. But yeah, I think, like, being able to identify your shortcomings at least gives you something to work with, right? And for me, personal development is really important. Like, trying to get better is really important. And I don't like the fact that quite often my relationships with things are temporary, and then I move on in my life to other things. And there are a few sort of exceptions to that in my life. And I've learned that if I can analyze what it is about those things that makes me stick with them regardless. Like a really good example actually would be my relationship history. I've often viewed many of my previous relationships as being fairly sort of temporary from the start. Because I have quite a few sort of, personal rejection issues, and so as a result, if you go into a relationship just assuming you will be rejected, then, and having that sort of temporary mindset, it makes it hurt less when it inevitably happens, right? And that was very much my attitude for a really long time, for most of my adult life, really. And then I met Jenny, my current partner. And I don't like referring to her as my current partner because that implies a lack of permanence, doesn't it? Just using the word current. But it's just a turn of phrase, I suppose. And like, this is honestly the first relationship I've been in where I've actually genuinely felt like it's also the last relationship I ever will be in. I've never had that feeling of security in a relationship before. I've always thought that at some point they'll get sick of me and they'll disappear. And so as such, I've treated relationships as a very transient thing. It's train. Okay, thank you. Thank you, folks. Yeah, no, exactly, Chad. Same. I'm 35, and it's exactly the same thing for me. It wasn't self-development wasn't something that we were taught at a young age. It's not something that we had ingrained into us as a principle for living. And so as a result, I've really had to, learn to do that for myself by myself. But yeah, the point I was trying to make is that, this relationship is the relationship that I'm in now is the first time I've ever really felt like secure and like, Jenny isn't just gonna up and disappear on me or get bored of me or get fed up of how much hard work I can be because of my ADD or shit like that. Like, she's so tolerant and understanding and so emotionally intelligent that she doesn't ever make me feel that way. And so that in turn has sort of really given me a feeling of permanence to this relationship. And it's teaching me a lot because it's teaching me how to identify interpersonal relationships that are healthy for me, that don't trigger my abandonment issues, that don't make me feel like I constantly have to be the one making the effort, taking the first step. Oh, Mugs. Oh, Mugs and Moose, come on. Let's have a big old hug. Honestly, Moose, I am much happier. Much happier. And that's the thing, Moose, is like, now that I know who you are, I know that you also knew me during one of the darkest periods of my life. We were very close during the period where I was really not in a good place. I just didn't know your YouTube username, so I didn't realise it was you previously. But, learning how to dissect your positive experiences and use them to educate you for the sake of your self-development is an incredibly powerful tool. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I have a relationship now that has enabled me to start to look at my interpersonal relationships in that way, to start to understand what causes a lack of permanence, why I eventually walk away from friendships, or why I go quiet, but then eventually come back. And either can happen. Like, sometimes I end up just walking away from a friendship and never coming back. Sometimes I just, go quiet for a while and then reappear and usually have to apologize for going quiet, which is, it kind of sucks when you have to apologize for something that you didn't like actively set out to do. You weren't like intending to abandon your friend or whatever, but that was what you did, and so you have to like creep back into their life and tail between legs and be apologetic about it. New England in the States where I grew up is also not well known for its in-depth white family converse in the 80s. Yeah, I get it. I definitely get it. I'm the odd one out of my friends group because they all have long terms or married and I'm forever alone. Oh, Mugs, come on. You're not destined to be forever alone. You're far too wonderful for that. You're such a wonderfully warm and caring individual. I don't believe for a second that you are destined to be forever alone. But, being able to take that and say, okay, maybe I need to understand what causes me to do this, so that instead of doing it and having to apologize for it, and then being at the mercy of like whether or not that person is hurt enough to accept the apology or not, like how much you've upset someone through your disappearance or through the circumstances surrounding your disappearance or whatever, and instead be able to identify what's good for you, what isn't, and not make these mistakes in the first place. Perhaps not foster relationships that you can't sustain. And that's the really important thing. That's kind of the life lesson, I guess, that I learned from it all, is the secret, the trick, the smart move, the fucking 9,000 IQ play is to not foster or to seek out or to develop relationships that you can't maintain. And there's a few kind of important things to that. And that is kind of making your level of presence / investment clear from the start. That's definitely a mistake I've made in the past. Like, when a friendship is new, you spend all your spare time with that person, and then as the friendship starts to develop, you spend less and less spare time with that person because you can't spend all of your free time with the same person without going fucking crazy in most cases. Like, there are very few humans in this world who can spend all of their spare time with one other human and not go mental. And you know, that leads to an impermanence in the relationship because you start to get that cabin fever and you start spending less time as a result, and then, you know, that can lead to sort of hurt feelings or you know, even fallings out and things like that. And also just like identifying if people have traits that just aren't very healthy for you. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people. I can think of an example of a friend who I was really close with at one point, and I would say that we were pretty good friends. You know, I would say that we were really good friends. But what I realized is just that they were really unhealthy for me. They accentuated a lot of my negative thoughts about myself and caused me to constantly feel like I was on the back foot when I was around them or when I was interacting with them. And the net result of that was that my experience of being friends with that person was quite negative. When that friendship eventually broke down, and it broke down because that unhealthiness of the relationship eventually spiraled into actively disliking each other, which, you know, to go from having a great friendship to being actively angry at each other is a real fucking shame, right? It's such a shame when that happens. Someone who you once loved and now you're at loggerheads with them. That's, you know, it sucks. It sucks for anyone. And the whole reason it got to that point is because I wasn't smart enough, and I mean, they weren't either. You know, it's not all on me, and I'm willing to give myself that small out. But, you know, we weren't smart enough to realise that our personalities weren't very healthy for each other. Whilst we had a lot of stuff in common, you know, we shared a lot of interests, and on the surface level we liked each other's personalities. Underneath the surface of that, our personality traits created an incompatibility through just triggering a lot of each other's anxieties and things like that. And so because that relationship always had that sort of underlying grittiness to it, it eventually led to a falling out. Whereas if you can actually identify those personality types prior to forging relationships with them, and just not seek friendships with people like that for the better understanding of knowing that it's just not going to be good for you in the long run. Like, that to me is a much healthier way to approach that situation. And it certainly took me a very, very long time to identify that. And one of the key sort of kicks in the arse that I needed in order to be able to identify that was actually being in a relationship with someone who never made me feel that way, because it highlighted to me how like, if this human makes you feel so secure and so loved, why does this other human who is supposedly one of your really good friends make you feel so on edge all the time and so unappreciated? Go on, James. Keep going. You got this. And James is a mod, so he can post links to pics if he wishes to. And you will see that his Eldar are fucking stunning. They're really nice. Whole army of yellow and blue boys. I was privileged to be able to paint a couple of them for him, and I feel like it's an honour to be allowed to paint for someone who is themselves a very, very good painter. I was deeply, deeply honoured to be allowed to contribute a couple of pieces to that army. But so, you know, sometimes growth, it can't come from something that you've contrived yourself. It can only come from reflecting on something that's just happened and is. And in my case, you know, it seems a little cliche, I guess, but my relationship with Jenny sort of taught me a lot about how unhealthy my friendships with some other people were. Make me. You know, I've got a lot of love for you, James, and you know I've got a lot of love for your miniature painting, so, you know it comes from a genuine place. I'm not just trying to suck your cock, so, like, deal. Just deal, friend. But yeah, like, conversely, to look at my relationship with my best friend Jake, we're actually both very similar in the lack of permanence thing. You know, we both tend to only have enough headspace to sort of pursue certain friendships at certain times, and we need to take downtime away from certain friendships in order to focus on other things. We are incredibly close friends, love each other like brothers, you know, really, really close friends, but we don't even speak every month, let alone every week or every day. And every time we do speak, it's like nothing has passed. They are gorgeous, yeah, they really are gorgeous. Yeah, like, you know, every time we speak, it's like no time has passed and there's no apology needed. There's no, like, it's no problem that the drift has occurred, because we both are secure in the fact that we have a really close, healthy friendship, and that whenever the drift does occur, it's just because one or the other of us has got other shit that we need to concentrate on at the time, and that we'll come back to each other eventually because we're best friends, you know? And I fucking love the guy more than anyone else in this world, besides maybe Jenny and my mum. And, like, he's always there when it matters, and that's what's important, you know? It, like, he might need to take his time away, and it's really funny because first he moved away. We met in Bath, where I used to live. First he moved away up north, and we obviously didn't see each other for a really long time when he moved away. And then he came back to Bath, and within a year of him coming back to Bath, I moved away. And it was really funny because obviously, like, we couldn't be mad at each other for it because we'd both done it. So instead we just, you know, tried to maintain our friendship at a distance. But quite comically, we were sort of really determined to not let the same distance form that I had when he moved away. Like, we both really missed each other when he moved away, and we were determined this time to actually stay close. And then coronavirus obviously became a thing, and we've just not seen each other for a year. It's really fucking funny. It sounds like you're describing all my friendships, to be honest. What, like that transience where you're okay with drifting in and out of each other's lives and you don't hold it against each other? I know now that I need to develop friendships where that is, you know, where that is a thing. And I know that it's important for me to have friends like that, because I know that I just will drift in and out. It is who I am as a person. It's not out of any desire or love or hate or any conscious thought of any kind. It is entirely a product of my personality. It's just who I am. But I have historically been really, really bad at forging those kind of friendships. I tend to forge friendships with people that try to latch onto me and then take it really personally when I'm not available to them. And I've also done that in relationships. And again, that is not healthy in relationships. Jenny is amazing at giving me space when I need it, but also, like, being vocal when she needs attention. You know, she's not afraid to just come into my office when I'm working and say, can I have a cuddle? You know, and that's like, I really need that, because I don't know she needs a cuddle until she says, I need a cuddle. So her having enough fucking nous to actually just come in and say, can I have a cuddle please? And that being enough for her is like exactly what I need. But I never historically would seek out relationships with people like that. I would seek out relationships with people who expected me to have 100% of the initiative 100% of the time. My personality type just isn't suited to that. Jake is a legend. Yeah, Moosecloth knows Jake. He knows him very well. He has been my best friend for many years. Same for me and my buddy from 6th grade. Playing TTRPGs online over the past 3 years has given us a chance to hang out weekly again after so long. That's lovely. That's really nice, Chad. Bath forever. Well, I don't know about Bath forever. I mean, I've moved away and I don't think I'm coming back, mate. So I don't know about forever, but it was definitely a really nice place to have spent 10 or so years. I don't regret my time there one bit. I really love a lot of the people that I met there, and I learned a hell of a lot, both about myself and about, you know, what my chosen profession was at the time. And Bath was really good for me in a lot of ways. It was really bad for me in some. Really bad for me enough that I'm glad I don't live there anymore, but that doesn't mean I regret that I did live there. I'm frankly awful at maintaining contact, and I just forget about friends and people, including my parents and family, without actively focusing. No, James, I do exactly the same thing, and it is completely just a passive personality thing. It is not a lack of love. You know, like, I've been... this might get a little bit personal, and if anybody's uncomfortable with this, then feel free to ask me to stop, and I will. I've been getting a little bit concerned about my mum's longevity recently. She has lung disease. Obviously, that means if she even catches a sniff of COVID, she's fucked. She's still not been offered a vaccine, and it's supposed to be going out to high-risk people first. And, you know, I'm not saying that I think she's gonna die. I'm saying that I've been much more aware of her mortality recently. And it would crush me if she died because of COVID. It would be like one of the worst things that's happened in my life. But because of my personality type, I'm still only, you know, calling her every now and again. I've started calling her a bit more. I call her maybe like once every week or two now, whereas I used to call her maybe once every couple of months. I'm certainly calling her a bit more, but I'm not like clinging to her, because that just isn't my personality. That isn't who I am. And it isn't of any lack of love. It's, you know, it's no desire to avoid people in any way, shape or form. I'm just a very... It's not even a case of being an independent soul, because I don't like being alone. I experience loneliness very acutely. It's more a case of constant upkeep of relationships is something that I tend to find stressful, and it sours my relationships with people. And so I've sort of learned as a coping mechanism for that to be more transient, more distant, and understand that, you know, if people need me, they'll come to me. And so it's okay for me to be more transient and distant. I don't have to be all up in people's faces all the time, reminding them how much I care about them. Because people who understand me will know that for themselves and will come to me when they need me. But there are definitely friendships and relationships that I've had in the past that have broken down as a result of people not understanding that, of people expecting you to constantly be checking in on them and catching up with them and wanting to know every detail of their life, and that just, it's not who I am. I don't necessarily think that that's a good trait. I don't necessarily, but it's also not something that I think is like a fatal flaw that I desperately need to work on. I think it's okay to be a distant person. It's okay to not constantly need to be cradled in the lives of your friends and lovers and relatives, and, you know, it's okay to have a daily life that is entirely your own and of your own design and your own initiative. And like, I don't think people should be made to feel bad for that, which in turn has meant that a lot of conflict that I've experienced has been as a result of people pushing back at me for being the way I am, and me defending myself. And so kind of the way I've resolved that now is to just understand that some people have a personality that allows them to, you know, see through other people's eyes to an extent, to understand that not everybody is like them, and they can understand that it may not be personal if you come and go. And those are people that are healthy for me to be around. Whereas some folk, you know, really need constant maintenance in their relationships with you, whether that be friendship or, you know, or whatever. And those people are just not healthy people for me to be around. And like, that's okay. There are so many people on this planet. You do not have to be friends with every single one of them that you encounter. And like, that isn't a bad thing. Where would you move away to, Moosecloth? Would you go back up north? I know you went up north for a while, but you didn't really get on up there, did you? I like Bath, honestly. I like Bath. I think if you're like a young single person, Bath is a great place to live. You will learn a lot, you will do a lot, you will meet a bunch of people, but it's not a place to settle and like raise a family and, you know, move on with the next sort of stage of your life. It's just not a place for that. It's too orientated towards youth and money, essentially, which are both things that I don't have. I'm not fortunate enough to have an abundance of either of those things. Bristol? Bristol's pretty good. Bristol's a bit of a party city, though. Bristol would have been bad for me personally, because it's a party city. I probably would have got back into some bad habits if I'd have gone to Bristol, because I've had that option a number of times, and I've always chosen to not take it for that reason. But Bristol is a pretty cool place. Like, it's got cool things. It's easier to find people to play hobbies with as well. You know, like both Warhammer and Magic are more accessible in Bristol than they are in Bath. In Bath, you've basically got the Games Workshop shop, and that's kind of where you're going to do your hobby, and there's not really any clubs that aren't connected to the uni. And obviously once you're a bit older than that, you maybe don't necessarily want to go to uni clubs. Well, you might. Okay, that's glued. Gluing swords on, but not gluing shields on, by the way, just to give me space to get in there. Plus it also means I can batch paint the shields separately. I can actually do them as their own batch. I enjoyed adult life in Bristol, hated student life in Bristol. Yeah, I can see why that would be a thing. I'm denying my age, I'm 29 plus 2. Oxford is a great place, it's just so sodding expensive to live here. Yeah, I imagine, I've visited Oxford a number of times, and I imagine it's probably very similar as a place to live to Bath. It's probably really, really similar. Lots of very forward-thinking, energetic young people, which is wonderful, but extremely expensive, and also like quite a few sort of party people who I sort of have to avoid these days. But yeah, I guess the ultimate point that I was also, or you know, one of the big points that I wanted to make but kind of forgot to, was that just because I am able to now accept my own personality type and understand the type of relationships that I should and shouldn't form, that doesn't mean that I think if you are someone who requires a lot of maintenance in your friendships or relationships, that there's anything wrong with you. I acknowledge the fact that different personality types exist and can learn to coexist, and that you do not have to be the same as other people to be valid. And as much as I'm saying that I don't think it's a bad thing that I am the way I am, I'm also not excluding those who disagree with how I am. I'm not saying that by by being someone who expects maintenance in your friendships that you're like pathetic and needy or anything like that. I'm saying that you are just not like me, and it's, you know, it's a shame, really, when I think back on the number of friendships and relationships that I've had that have soured as a result of, you know, those people needing that maintenance and me not being able to provide it. It's a shame to have not identified that in myself sooner. And so I think, you know, self-reflection and talking about your self-reflection is really important because of things like that. Because there are times where somebody else might pick up on something you're saying and be able to relate to it and help themselves, and, you know, maybe prevent some of those negative experiences that can come from that. I miss the UK. You been here a lot then, Chad, or you used to live here, or what's the dealio, buddy? Talk to me. Oxford's on my list of places I would like to live. I was going to go to uni there. Oxford, I am absolutely sure Oxford must be a really, really nice place to live. In exactly the same way that Bath is. But I would also be willing to bet my left bollock that it shares a lot of Bath's problems. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if the heroin gangs have got into a city like Oxford. That is a big problem in richer parts of the UK. It's really bizarre to think that that would be something you would associate with richer parts of the country. That's not an obvious mental association that people make, but it's very much a thing. It's kind of, I don't know. It's a surprise juxtaposition, but it is very much a thing. The average one-bed flat is 200k, so as a single working professional, it's almost impossible to own your own place here. Although, I mean, to be fair, honestly, Mugs, it's just almost impossible as a single working professional to own your own place these days. Like, even in the cheapest parts of the country, it's just almost impossible. Because the thing is, in the cheapest areas to live, the wages are generally lower. So comparative to what you're earning, you're in exactly the same boat as somebody who's earning 10 times your amount but lives in an area that's 10 times more expensive. You know? Frequent visitor, few trips as a young person, and then lots of volunteer work-related travel for my current organisation. Also eloped to Scotland. Wow! Well, hopefully you'll be able to get back over here fairly sharpish after you've got COVID out of the way. I know obviously where you are, it might take a little bit longer to feel safe to travel than here. I mean, we're already pretty steadily underway with vaccination now. Oxford has no independent tabletop miniature game shops. County lines are a huge problem. Oh wow, I did not know that. I did not know that. You would expect Oxford to have like a really strong hobby presence, right? You would expect lots of shops to pop up around like D&D clubs and then, you know, branch into like miniature hobby and stuff. That's so surprising to me. Right, folks, I am at a point where I need to ask you all a question. My throat is getting very dry, which means I need to go and make a coffee. I've also nearly finished the basic shell build of these. I've almost got them to the point where I just need to stick on the shoulder pads and leg pads. So, I will turn the power over to you. Would you like me to go and get a coffee, leave the Be Right Back screen on, and then come back and hang out for a little bit longer? Or shall I clean up this last one and then stop the stream and go and get a coffee? I got exceedingly fortunate that when my gran passed away, my mum didn't need the inheritance, so passed it to myself and my sister, which let us get our own place. Oh, mate, that is a boon. That is an absolute boon. Heather, you take care of yourself, love. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate you being here. It's one board game cafe and a games workshop, that's it. The nearest tabletop shop outside of that is Reading, which is still a GW. Wow. Wow. It's got to make it hard to like meet up for physical games. I can see why you haven't played since 7th. Chad says he'll be around either way. And I'm happy to turn it over to you folks, because at the end of the day, like, if you want a slightly longer stream, if you want to sit and hang out and chat, and this is kind of what you're doing with your day right now, then I want to give you the opportunity to stick around and have that. But if you've got other shit that you want to do, and you know, you're kind of hanging out and just wasting time and would rather get on with your days, then I don't mind calling the stream after I've tidied up this bit. So, you know, I'm kind of happy to be at your mercy, folks, just depending on what you want. I don't mind extending the stream by a bit if you specifically want me to, but I also don't mind calling it here if people have got shit they want to get on with and do not want the distraction of an annoying fat man building plastic soldiers. Stick, you fiend. No, I said stick. Please. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're stuck. Oh, that might make the shield difficult. I might have to move that arm. Yeah, it's fine, because I tend to... Oh, okay, this arm wanted to come off. I guess we're moving the shield angle then. I don't know if moving the shield angle will actually do anything. I think it's this arm that's got a shift. So what I tend to do is, even though I use Tamiya thin cement, I tend to be quite sparing on the amount that I use for arms. Although the waist I actually appear to have scrimped on a bit as well. So for the first couple of hours until it's like really firmly cured, I can usually still pull them apart. Yeah, this guy's sword arm's going to need to be... I had it sort of forward, and it's going to need to be like up quite high. So we just hang on a second. I might just glue the sword to the arm. And then reposition the arm with the sword on. Because this will glue better like this anyway, without the weight of the sword. Chaos Spawn Custodes bash? That would be hard. That would be hard, hard, hard. Custodes are so clean. This is actually one of the guys that I could probably fix the shield to in situ, and it would probably be fine, but... I think if everyone's fairly indifferent, what I'll probably do is wrap up, because I can just work a little bit faster without the cameras on and stuff. So if people have still got other stuff to do if I go, I don't want to abandon you all, but if people have got other stuff to do if I go, then it's probably less of a thing if I decide to scoot off and sort of double down. Yeah, I love this background music. It was the first thing someone complimented me on during this stream. And you know, like, just under 3 hours is still a pretty good stream, isn't it? It's still a pretty decent stream. So what I'll do is I'll head off, but I will be in the Discord. I might be in the Hangout and Hobby, because I can still kind of move stuff a bit more out of the way, the Hangout and Hobby. and give myself a bit more space and sort of work a little bit more efficiently. So I may do that for those who do want to sort of continue chatting. If any of you are not in the Discord, I don't have a bot for YouTube, but if you head to patreon.com/thatmrshy, link in the description, you can sign up for $1 a month, which is what, 70p a month. That'll give you access to the Discord, but it does also give you a bunch of extra benefits. The $1 tier is really good value. So if you like this community, if you're new to this community, you've been watching this stream and enjoying some of the regulars, you can hang out with myself and these people in the Discord, and it's a really nice time. It's just a thing that I really, really enjoy doing. Having the Discord is quite the feather in the cap. So if you want to come and join us, it starts at $1 a month, and you can do that. You can come hang, have access to our hangout and hobbies, our TTS games. We have rooms for posting your work in progress, your completed miniatures, rooms for discussing food, music, books, films, wrestling, all the sort of different things that I'm into, that I share a hobby with other people. But with that said, folks, I will get myself out of here now. I will crack on, get these guys finished. But thank you so much for hanging out, everyone. I appreciate it. It's been